So, what's happening? It's me, Coach Marlena Cole. Today, I want to talk about what is happening when you can't get to the second date. Things went well. You had your first date, maybe even going backwards, you talked on the phone or met, especially if you met online, talked on phone, chatted, text, whatever, had a great conversation, decided to go out on the first date, and then you felt like you connected well, right? Great conversation, great food, maybe you even extended the date time, but then nothing, right? He texts, don't plan a second date, and after a few weeks, it falls apart. This is so familiar. This is the story I continue to hear, especially with meeting people online. Now, it does happen when you meet people in person, but a lot of people are really experiencing this when they meet people online. I have some theories about that, but I want to talk about how can you stop that cycle. It reminds me of one of my clients, Alicia. Felicia came to me because she was having this very problem. And when she came to me, she told me, like, hey, I went out with a few guys. First date went great, good conversation, but then nothing, right? It was like no text messages. At first, we were talking. They said they had a good time. I was looking forward to seeing me, but then they never set up the second date. And after a few weeks, I was tired of the text messages, so I ended it, or they just ghosted. They just disappeared. And she decided to reach out to me because she heard me talking on, I think I was on a podcast, or she was saying how I was talking about how most relationships fall apart within a year. But before it even can get to relationships, most what I call interactions, where people are meeting people the first, second, third date, those fall apart within the first 3 weeks to a month. They can't even get past 3 months, if a month. And so when I started asking her questions, like, tell me about these encounters. Tell me about the last three people you met where this happened. And so when she was telling me the story, it became obvious to me. I'm like, okay, all right, here's what's happening. It's like there is a connection, but it's not strong enough to continue the conversation. And one of the things people, you meet decent people, they're going to stay engaged in the conversation, right? They know how. It's almost like being in corporate America. It's like everybody knows how to play the game. Everybody knows how to put on the face, even though inside you're like, yeah, this is not working. And so when she was meeting decent guys, and so they know how to be respectful, I was like, yeah, so this makes sense. But what's happening is that a real connection that makes you want to take it to the next level is not happening. It is not happening. I noticed a few things that she can do that can actually help her be able to connect better. And a lot of times I hear women say, it's him, he didn't ask for a next date. He stopped texting, or he only texting, not calling. But they don't realize that they also have a very, very vital role in participating in the connection. And if you ask me, women essence are who we are, our ability to create and set an atmosphere is what allows the connection to happen. And that's not to say men don't have a part in it, but a lot of time when you meet decent guys, right, we're talking decent guys, they are waiting for you to set the tone, right? They're waiting to kind of take your lead sometime in how to treat you and how to show up for you, especially in those first couple dates. Now you find the exceptional guy who knows how to connect, who knows how to set the atmosphere, who knows just how much to lean into the conversation. But that's the exception and not the majority. So a lot of times when you're meeting people, you're going to meet men who are not the exception. And even if you meet a man who is the exception and knows how to lean in, knows how to make that connection and grow, you still have a part to play as a woman if you want to stop having these interactions just fall apart. Because when it happens, it makes you lose your confidence, and it makes you start seeing the dating world as problematic. Especially when you want a relationship, that's not a good thing to feel that like this is never going to happen. And so I want to talk today about a few things that will allow you as a woman to be able to lead in your feminine energy and allow you to help create the atmosphere so that you connect, even if you decide later on that's not a connection that you want to keep. And so one of the things that Felicia was doing that right off the flip, off the get go, that I thought that she could do to set the atmosphere was I wanted her to what I call lower the pressure, right? For herself. Lower the pressure for yourself. And when you lower the pressure for yourself, you're going to lower the pressure for the whole encounter. And what I mean by that is the word date and dating is has its own history, it has its own baggage. And so she kept saying he didn't set up a second date and they don't want to go out on a date and date. And I said, let's take out the word date because the word date to you means that X has to be checked, Y has to be checked. Or you have very specific criterias, whether you realize it or not, that has to happen on that date for that to be a good date. Let's reframe the word date so you don't have this criteria that it has to be met by a stranger because he's a stranger. And let's just call it a social gathering. I was like, if it's a social gathering, that's more calming, that's less pressure, that's more neutral because you want to create an atmosphere that's neutral. It's not good, it's not bad, it's not happy, it's not sad, it's neutral. So that way we can build from this plain right, this plain even feel, not bringing our past hurt or our future forwarding, what I call future forwarding, where we're like, is he the one? Is he playing games or is she the one? Because I get this also from the men in my DMs saying how women don't know how to connect, how women don't know how to hold conversation, how women are expecting too much of them on these first encounters, right? And so I was like, just lower the pressure. There's no pressure. So think of it as a social gathering. You're going out to meet someone new. And I think the art of just human connection has been lost, right? It's just in the sense that we take for granted being the time and energy somebody took out of their day to spend with us. Right? That is a big deal. And maybe not for you, but it is for me. If I take my time, my energy out of my day to spend an hour or 2 hours with you, whether you're a girlfriend or a friend, that means something to me. And so I would hopefully you're grateful for that time because I'm grateful for the time that you're giving me because that's something we can't get back, right? Our energy and our time we can't get back. So I was like, let's just lower the pressure and be excited about spending time with another human being that has decided and chose to spend time with you, right? And I think that that may rub people the wrong way, but it's like we're human and that is precious, right? To be able to spend time with another human being and have conversation and share things about you and learn things about them. And so I was like, let's just look at it from that perspective as well, right? Value and appreciate and be grateful for that time. Again, it lowers the pressure of him needing to perform, you needing to perform. And when you make it neutral, when you bring in gratefulness, it allows you to set the atmosphere to be able to connect with this person, right? And I think this is the role of the female, right? I think men have a role, which we're not going to get necessarily get into today, but women have a in my opinion, if you have a desire to be in a relationship and you have a desire to find your person and connect with them, then you have a role and an accountability to set the atmosphere with your feminine essence. And so these are some of the things that I see as a feminine essence that we can bring to the table to be able to help better connect with men. All right. So the other thing, and this one, she was like, "What?" I was like, you need to learn to listen more than you learn to talk. Because I was like, tell me more. Tell me how the conversation flowed, right? Don't, you ain't got to get into the nitty gritty, but I want some big strokes on how the conversation flowed. And I was like, you got to learn to listen better. I was like, here, you started talking about yourself when it was really time that he was trying to share something with you. And if you'd have been more curious, versus rather than being quick to talk and show how you connect with that story, that would have been an opportunity for you all to connect at a deeper level, right? That would have taken the conversation a little bit more in depth instead of this surface thing, or you kind of jumping over what he said, right? And so there was quite a few opportunities where she missed to just listen or to be curious and ask more questions or just to acknowledge what he said. And I was like, you have to learn and be okay with listening more than you talk, right? Because a lot of times when you learn to listen in a curious way, not in a I'm trying to find something wrong with him or trying to catch something wrong with him, you're able to connect more and you're able to learn a lot more than you would by probing or trying to figure it out on your own. People love to talk about themselves. Let them, and not in a way of trying to find some, but let them because you're there to connect. You're there to be curious. You're there to learn something new or to share something new. Learn the art of listening. And that's not in the women should be quiet, right? Kind of energy. That is in more that I'm present with you and I hear you and I see you and I'm curious and I want to know more. Tell me more about that. Right? That is my perfect question when I'm connecting with somebody. Tell me more about that. Something I'm genuinely interested in knowing. Tell me more about that. And guess what? They're going to light up on the inside and they're going to feel safe. They're going to drop their guards. And guess what's created, ladies? An atmosphere for connection. That is your goal. Let me even jump ahead. That's your goal. When you're out of create my goal, my responsibility is to create an atmosphere of connection, and that's feminine energy. The other thing we talked about with her was just grounding herself before the date, not in needy, graspy energy, right? I don't want to waste my time. All these stories in our head. Is he a liar? Is it real? Being all nervous. Of course, we're going to be nervous because we want to show up as our best. So he's bringing nervousness, you're bringing nervousness, and that's okay. But not in a point of graspiness, like the date has to be this. Again, back to that word date, right? That then has to keep this structured way of how he has to treat you and what needs to happen in order for this to be a good date for him to get a second date. Because those are the things that's happening in the back of your mind. But I told her, I said, before every date, I want you to ground yourself. Grounding herself just means calm down. Calm yourself down. I want you to calm yourself down so that way you're bringing in more of an energy of being relaxed. And when you're relaxed and you feel safe, he's relaxed. And when he's relaxed, you're going to feel safer. And you guys are going to be able to see each other. You're going to hear each other. You're going to be interested in each other. And guess what's going to happen? You're going to make a connection, right? All because you have learned to reframe the word dating to social gathering. You have learned to really be grateful for the time and energy that he's chosen to spend with you. And that's going to create an atmosphere of connection, right? You're also going to learn to listen more than you talk, to be curious so that you can learn everything you're going to need to learn when you're curious and you're present in the moment. He's going to feel seen and heard. And he's going to be like, man, she's super special. Man, this is something different about this. And then lastly, like I said, ground yourself before that date. Make sure that you don't have any need to be able to, for anything, any expectations. You don't need anything to happen specifically in order for you to have a great time. That you're going to have a great time because guess what? You're spending time with another human being that's taking the time and energy out of their day to be with you. And guess what? I'm grateful for that. That's going to ground you in self sufficiency, ground you in human connection. And that is going to allow you to set, as a feminine energy, set the atmosphere for connection. Even if you choose later not to keep that connection, that's super fine. You may be like, that was fun, that was great, but no, I want to move on. And you can absolutely do that. The goal is to be able to have a connection because there's nothing like not knowing how to connect. Choosing not to connect is one thing, or stay connected is one thing, but not even knowing how to connect, that's a whole different issue. And there's no way you're going to be able to get into a healthy relationship if you, as a woman, don't learn how to create the atmosphere for connection. And then take on that accountability. Do it within the first 15, 20 minutes of that date. Do it before the date start by grounding yourself in the date, by reframing your thought about what this interaction, this social gathering is, especially within those first 1 to 3 dates. And that's why a lot of times when this doesn't happen, falls apart in the first 3 weeks. They go from talking to texting. And let's talk about Felicia. Felicia ended up mastering this. And she was like, Marlena, this feels so good. And I can hear her in my head saying it was no pressure. It was no pressure. And she ended up having many wonderful dates. She and stopped getting ghosted. She end up meeting her future husband in a very short amount of time because she learned to use her feminine energy to connect and take the accountability to create the atmosphere even before she got on the date. Now that's boss, right? To me, that is boss because when we talk about being a boss chick, being independent, that is boss because a lot of times we talk that talk, but when it comes to intimate relationships, we're still in that 1940s, 1950 mindset of wanting the man to lead everything, right? And he can lead, but you have to also set the atmosphere for him to lead, right? Because men don't know how much to lean in, how much not to lean in, and decent people, decent men rather don't want to overstep, right? They want to be gentle. They want to, kind of take your lead to see how you're vibing, right? And then they follow that vibe. So show them the vibe of connection, show them the vibe of feminine energy and how you like to connect in the ways that I just said. I'm not going to repeat all those, so rewind it. um, and so if you're finding yourself, let me get some water. If you're finding yourself in a cycle of failed interactions, failed dates, not being able to get past the first date, try these things that I've talked about. One other thing Felicia said is like the one guy she ended up like when she finally got it and and it was working, she was like, he pulled out his phone and he was like, I have to see you again. And she was like, excuse me, he was like, let's set up the date, check your schedule, right? He's planning that second date. He's planning that second date, but while they're on the first date. And he called her when he got home, when she got home, make sure she got home. He ended up calling her the next day. They end up just having a really, really good connection. And it felt so amazing. She was like, I didn't know I can date without the pressure. All right. I hope this was helpful. I'm Coach Marlena Cole.